One of the best ways to improve your lawn and landscaping is to have clean edges in your yard, and that's easy to do with one of these battery-powered string trimmers, but these can get expensive and I got a lot of comments asking for a cheaper alternative, so I've selected the two top models that are under $200, but we're going to put these to the test to see if they can get the job done and help you decide which one is right for you. The models we'll be looking at includes Ego's 56-volt battery-powered string trimmer or weed whacker. Now the Toro model is their 60-volt model, but if you read the fine print, it really operates at the same 56 volts as well. When you put these side by side, you'll notice immediately that the Toro is actually a little bit smaller. It's only 68 inches long end to end versus the Ego that's 73 inches. Now if you're a very tall person or you're trying to get way underneath shrubs, the Ego might be a better bet. Another difference is the cutting width of each unit. Now the Toro can be adjusted to cut at either 14 or 16 inches across, but the Ego has a fixed cutting width of 15 inches. But if you've got a smaller yard or a tighter landscape, being able to adjust it down to 14 inches can be really handy. And I love that both trimmers include a rapid load head. That means you'll never have to wind string trimmer line again the old way. You just insert the line through a special hole in the head and then just crank it up by hand, and in less than 30 seconds your line will be loaded up and it saves a lot of frustration. I weighed each unit with the battery attached and they weighed almost exactly the same. They're about 10 pounds. Both units work identically. You engage the top level safety switch and then the bottom is a variable speed trigger. But the Toro's got an advantage here because it actually has two speed settings. So this sets your maximum range and give you a lot more flexibility, especially if you're newer to trimming. I wanted to do a speed test because when I ran both trimmers, the Ego sounded like it was running a lot faster. The only way to check this was to use a special tool called a phototachometer to measure the speed that these heads were actually spinning. I don't recommend that you do this at home, but I rigged up the string trimmer so that it would run and I could make the measurement. I started with the Toro, and you can see that I was measuring about 5,700 RPMs. And by itself, that number doesn't mean much until we can compare it with the Ego. Now I really expected the Ego to have a much higher reading because it just sounded like it was running faster. Now to be fair, I also made sure that I adjusted the string length line to match the Toro exactly. I was very surprised when I ran the test because the Ego was running almost exactly the same speed as the Toro, even though it sounded a lot louder. Now with a string trimmer like this, your battery is everything, but between the Toro and the Ego, there wasn't really any big difference. I kind of like the battery gauge in the Ego better, but both of these things were well built. They include a charger that can be placed on a table or be wall mounted as well. I wanted to find out how long these batteries would really last. Now if I just ran them in open air, they would probably run for hours, and if I ran them in my yard, the different types of grass would not give me a good result. So I wanted to test these trimmers with an even amount of resistance, but have it so that the line would not wear down. So I rigged this stand up to hold each trimmer into the water just about an inch to create an even level of resistance. That hose is refilling the water tank because I didn't want the level to change at all throughout the test. Ego had a good consistent sound throughout the entire test. Now that told me it was putting out the same amount of power even as the battery was depleted, but towards the very end I could hear a sudden change in the battery and then it finally stopped pretty much on a dime, but the runtime ended up just under 16 minutes. Now it was time to switch over to the Toro, and I should note that I'm running the Toro on its maximum speed setting. And like the Ego, the Toro had no problems throughout the entire test and it had a good even sound to it. When the Toro hit 15 minutes, I pretty much figured it was done just like the Ego, but it kept going. And when it hit 21 minutes, I really couldn't believe it. But after 21 minutes, the motor slowed down and it was kind of burbly.
It's still going, it wants 22 minutes. 22 minutes, right on the button.
But I also used each of these trimmers for almost 3 weeks so I could give you my opinion. Now the Ego felt like it did have more torque in certain situations, so I took it out to this field to put it to a test, and it had no problems whatsoever cutting down this kind of heavy brush. But this torque came at a price, and I think that's why the battery life was so short, and that's not the kind of trimming that most of us are doing at home. This is a lot more typical. Now here I'm using the Toro, and I like this tool a lot better. It was a lot more controllable. That Ego's extra power felt a little bit grabby, and I even had a tough time holding a line while I was doing the trimming. And you won't go wrong with either of these tools, but if I was picking one, I'd choose the Toro because it's a little bit more versatile, but it's got a lot more battery runtime. If you want one of the best kept secrets for keeping your lawn looking great, get yourself a string trimmer, and these ones that run on a battery make the job a lot easier. So this video showed you a couple of winners that won't break the bank and gave you some ideas as to which one might be the right one for you. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already for more videos coming up.